The things that divide us are stronger than the things that unite us. That is a central premise of Jonathan Hickman's and Nick Dragotta's East of West, a 45 issue epic Western series that took place between 2013 and 2019. I actually was under the impression that this had a lot longer of a road to
Yeah.
completion than it did. That's not that bad considering it's an Image comic. Uh,
And the Hickman comic at that.
Damn, Slade,
sure.
is it Shade to
We
Image.
read half of this series for today's book club, which amounts to the first 5 volumes of the run. This is my first time reading it all. How about you guys?
I read the first issue for, I think, my old podcast, and I didn't like it when I first read it. TBD
Uh,
on what I feel on it now, but I did read the first issue and I didn't stick with it. It was one of those things where like there was a lot of hype around it. I knew people liked it, but it just wasn't my cup of tea.
yeah, I made it through to the third volume. This was back in the day where I was picking up everything and anything that was Image Comics, and we got to this one panel, and I swear to you, I was transported to 2014, where I was like, "Holy shit! I have read all this stuff. I've read up to this point." And I remember dropping it because things were just going over my head, and so it was really interesting to come back to this as what I feel like a more educated reader and pick up on things, have conversations go on in my head that I wouldn't have thought previously. So I'm very excited to talk about this one.
This was voted on by the listeners through our Patreon page, patreon.com/slash the comics pals. You guys overwhelmingly chose this series, which doesn't really come as a surprise given the creatives involved. Jonathan Hickman is at this point a legend in terms of writing comics. He's gone on to have so much success at Marvel. I mean, this takes place during his prime at Marvel, actually, because this is during Fantastic Four, this is during Avengers. So, Hickman used those series to springboard and, do some big stuff outside of Marvel. And then Nick Dragotta, I mean, this was his first Image book. Um, I don't know a lot about his trajectory prior, but we know where he's at now. We know that he's doing Absolute Batman with Scott Snyder, a massive success. And then Frank Martin is also a part of that Absolute Batman team. I think it's pretty evident why one goes with the other
Mm.
based on this series. These two just work really, really well together. Frank Martin on the colors, Russ Wooten on the letters, a name synonymous with great Image comics.
Yeah, where's he been?
Uh,
That name was like the Image letterer, and I haven't heard his name in a while.
They let him loose, man.
yeah, yep. That's the creative team. It stays that way throughout the run. Pretty strong group of creators overall. Um, I want to get right into it because I did not like this.
Oh,
Oh wow.
I
Okay.
had this was probably the most disappointing thing I've read in a very long time. And it was frustrating to read for me. It really, really aggravated me for most of the experience. I did not like this.
Okay, let's get into it. Why?
I thought it was pretentious. I thought it was written extremely frustratingly. Hickman doesn't seem to have any interest in clarity, and I think that's a sin of writing. It feels like it's for the sake of it too. There's no need for it to be obtuse, but it is, and that really, really bothered me. It didn't have to be like that.
Interesting, because
what?
my critique on it would have been uh, there are chunks of the book that find flowery, and I don't mean that literally because this book has a lot of death and bones and blood and just ruin. But there's a lot of like a Game of Thrones esque talking head scenes talking about machinations for their individual nation and all of that. So I found it flowery, but obtuse is an interesting way to come about it.
Yeah, I guess, at what point did this frustration start? Like, was
The
it on the
beginning.
outset?
It
Really?
it, it doesn't. I think obtuse is a perfect word. It doesn't have a desire to express itself clearly. Jonathan Hickman, it feels like he's taking pleasure in not being transparent with what is happening. Like normally, I come here and I break down. Okay, this is what happened. This was that. I can't do that today. I don't feel like this story allows for that because it takes so long for characters to express their motivation and some don't. I'm not fully even sure what every character was after, and they feel more like stand-ins for points than characters unto
Mm.
themselves, and that is just not interesting. I really wanted to like this, but I rarely have been more disappointed than this.
I feel like I'm on the opposite spectrum of that. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I thought that there was depth in maybe not who the characters are, but their machinations and what they want out of other nations, what they potentially are edging and aiming for, how the consequences of one person affects the other nations and how they have to play around that, and some of the spy pieces that happen. Yeah, I really enjoyed this. I thought initially when I had first read that I wasn't capturing stuff, and now I understand. Okay, what death's after, why they're culling the world, what the prophet even means and stands for.
Yeah, I think I lie in the middle of all three of us actually, which great way for a three-person show to be. Um, in so much that like I still what you feel, Sean, is how I felt when I originally read it. I feel like literally, I remember almost being annoyed at it because I was a big Secret Warriors fan and I had read Hickman before, and I'm like, all right, cool, I'm gonna pick up one of his indie books. This could be interesting. And it was like, whoa, I don't know what this was. I was confused and I was um I don't want to say like it felt snooty, but at the time it felt snooty to me from like a writing standpoint. Reading this in such a large chunk uh, was a feat. I gotta say, it's 5 volumes, about half the volumes, right? I think there's
There's 10,
10 volumes,
yeah.
10. So this gets us to like I think like the 24th issue or something like that. Um, I think reading that and reading all that, like you don't, but there are characters in this that you still don't know their motivation by issue 24, and they've been there since issue 1. Like what's his name? The Charlemagne Champlain, the
Mm.
president of the Confederacy. Well, spoiler. He we still don't know what his real objective is halfway through the series. So I can see how that is annoying because it is a bit annoying. But what I was getting out of this was like, all right, this is a world that sucks. These are people, and then there's the chosen that are people in power, and they are trying to hasten the oncoming apocalypse for this world, which is really just the U.S. in the future. And there are people below them trying to stop that, whether they know it or not.
Well, they're not in positions of power because even someone like Champlain is vying for the presidency. He's vying for that next spot. The what is it? John's sister is one of the chosen and is killed. Like, uh, they feel like a cult within the that has infected the some of the leadership of the of these governments that remain of the world, and how it's their story as opposed to like the individual rulers, like the kingdom and the king. It's actually the son who's doing all these things.
I feel like you exited that sentence at an odd place. I thought there was more to come. Go ahead, Simon.
It was like ending issue volume 5 of this book. It was like, oh, what?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, I understood the Wikipedia page more than I did the book itself. Um, man, this is just one of those times. Like, I don't even know how to talk about this book, and I'm like borderline frustrated that he was even chosen because this doesn't, especially not reading all of it. I don't know how to discuss it because there's characters in it who I have no idea why they're there. I don't know what they want, and it feels like there's so much more to come and so much more to be unveiled.
Mm-hmm.
And having to read it under such a constraint, it's just like, I don't know, man. This was, oh boy.
The one part that I think for me loses me even on this read were the endless parts with Chaveo, the native who is a chosen, and like the battle with death, and the ramifications. I think to your point, the ramifications are going to be felt down the line because even the chief of chiefs of the Endless Nation, one of the again kingdoms that exists in the U.S. here, is still in play there. I managed to get through volume 6, and some of that stuff still falls. Like there's dominoes that are consistently following all throughout this, which makes it difficult to, I guess, really look at what the end goal or what the end can be.
One of the themes in this that I liked actually, and Marco, you pulled one of the pages from it. I don't know what issue it is, but it's the character of the ranger. I think his name is Huck.
Oh yeah.
We get introduced to him early on in volume 2. His character is just he was essentially a nobody whose family was killed, and the people in power got away with it, and he decided to take that power into his own hands and exact justice. And then he kind of exists throughout it. Kind of has almost like a Punisher mentality throughout this, the East of West world. And I find his story and that, every man fighting for some semblance of control in this world, controlled by elites, interesting because I feel like there is almost a character in each land that is doing that.
Mm. Like
Um,
everyone's trying to make it through to the end, whatever that end.
yeah,
Uh,
because in a
yeah.
way, Death's like that. Death's. I guess he would be the main character. Death's the guy you see on the cover of issue 1, the guy with the cowboy hat, who the man in white. Um, and he has this strict, I guess, rebirth cycle and strict framework of being a horseman of the apocalypse. It's constantly this cycle of death and rebirth. And he decided to break it one cycle and live for himself. And that's controlling something that is outside of your control, you know? And I can see that in the character of like Doma and some of uh, the Widowmakers for the PRA, which is like the west coast of the U.S. here. I like those themes in it. I think it gets bogged down with the preachiness of the message. There's a lot of
Mm.
the blanks in this book, and it gets referred to it as that, assuming that we know what that is. The characters do, but I'm not sure the reader ever really fully understands.
What is the message?
Well, it's never revealed to us.
Yeah.
Once I got to the end of the like third volume and I realized I don't know what the message is, I wanted to throw the book out. That's how angry I was. How can you build a whole idea, a whole story around the message and everybody refers to it, but yet I, as the reader, have no idea what it is? That's not tantalizing. That's mind numbing. It's hard for me to believe that the same person who at the same time was doing such amazing clear storytelling in Avengers and New Avengers, dealing with massive concepts that involve multiple worlds and incursions and everything else, how he could be so clear there, but so obtuse here, almost by design. Like I don't get it. I don't understand who this is for. I've really struggled with that. Like why? Why not tell us what the message is?
But I don't think it's necessary information. Like
It
we
is.
don't need.
I'm just telling you right now. It
No,
is.
but
Yeah, I don't
you
think so
don't
either.
need you don't need to read the Bible to understand the stories around the Bible or to understand that it implies or infers messages.
But see, that's the problem. People don't read the Bible and they think they know what it is, but they don't. That's why the world is what it is. I, as the reader, want to know what the point of this all is. Otherwise, it's just frustration. What is it? How can you be happy when you don't know what the message is?
What I actually, because I'm with Marco here, because I don't think the message is necessary, because the message is it's just an idea, really. And
The idea of what?
it's not for us to know, because we're not the chosen. And that's to kind of put me in that
Oh my
spot.
God.
That's the thing. But like it's not. It's the chosen are the ones that know the message. And it's essentially what I got the gist of it is it's the end of all things. It's knowing what the end will be. I don't need to know what that is. I assume they will show it to me. Halfway through, it hasn't, but I would assume that would be the end of it. So it's the apocalypse is what the message is, and like the idea that like I don't need to know what the message is, because most of the characters also don't know what the message is. Some of them don't even know it exists in some places. Like the president
Doubt
of the original Union, he didn't know what any of this was, but he was a person in power. So I that didn't bother me as much, because it at least put me in, me not knowing it almost feels like I'm in the world in a bit.
Hmm.
So that didn't bother me, because I also did not want to just read a prose page with a whole bunch of Hickman infographics. So I'm glad there wasn't much of that.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It feels just like not to this degree, but almost like a MacGuffin, like the need to know of it, whereas it is relevant and affects the people and our major players, but it doesn't affect like me knowing a verse isn't going to affect how I feel about a character's action.
And me knowing it doesn't mean anything. I don't believe in it, so me knowing what it says doesn't mean anything to me.
Yes, it does. Well, maybe not to you, but it does to me, because I need to know why these characters are doing these things. I need to understand what their motivation is. And without the message, their motivation is unclear. It just doesn't, to me, this story does not function without knowing what the message is. I don't understand how I'm supposed to wrap my head around everybody doing all these awful things under the guise of something that we don't even know, or even have really a concept of what it is that they're fighting for, or why this world is like this. Like, for example, did you guys know? Maybe you did. I didn't. I only learned it from Wikipedia. Did you know that this is a world in which the Civil War never ended?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm glad.
yeah. That it's the opening of the book with the. It shows the Union and the Confederacy, and then like Mao Zedong is also alive in this world, and his lineage continued, which I thought was like interesting. I'm like, oh, this they're going for historical realism here, and they're like, no, we're at Mao Zedong 9, you know, so no, we're not historically realistic here.
Did that framing work for you guys? Like the revisionist portion of the history and how we're placed in that setting?
Uh,
Does that make enough for a compelling narrative?
in what sense?
Like, does the setting compel you to be interested in the book in how the politics of the world play out?
I so that's one of the other complaints I have with the book. Is because yes, there is the framework that this is a world in where the Civil War never ended, and instead almost expanded and blew up because the Native Americans were essentially a third party in the Civil War that caused a stalemate. And it was like, okay, it felt like Hickman needed a war to use as context to build a world from that. But I don't think any of the actual like real life ideologies and issues factor into like the Union and the Confederacy here.
Hmm.
All of them are kind of painted in a similar brush. Nobody is really better than the other morally, so it felt like a little bit of a weird context to have the world be in. So that was a kind of a knock I had on it. Like this is a world where the freemen, which would be the kingdom, were strong enough to build their own land and their own kingdom and everything like that. And then it glosses that over and just kind of deals with it. And like the Union, the Confederacy still exists, but like it's just another world. Like I don't know, Lazarus has another state or anything like that. It doesn't feel like there's any kind of reason for it to be the Confederacy, if that makes sense.
Mm.
I thought it was bizarre. I mean, the book opens on three kids in the middle of God knows what, doing God knows what, with bones and eyes and fucking all this bullshit. None of it is explained. And then it's just a massive info dump early on, and it's just like I don't even know. Like I'm looking at those pages right now, and it's hard to say what they're even showing. Um, I feel like there are points where things are explained later on that add context without the book doesn't work. It almost feels like it tells you things that you need to know later, that you need to know early later, that validate what you read earlier, but reading the things without the context makes it painful. Like
Mm.
I almost would have preferred to have gotten a lot more of the information that the book reveals later earlier, because for at least half of my read it feels like people are just doing things for
Yeah.
reasons that are just unclear.
Like the timeline, I think would have been super helpful because then you can pinpoint time with the stories that are happening. Yeah, that's fair. That's valid.
But by the time we got to the timeline, I had already checked out.
Yo, that was like volume 4.
Yeah, I was already like, I don't care anymore
Yeah.
because it was so essential. But like without it, like how do you dissect where we are? Who cares? Who's doing what? Like, I just really struggled. Now, don't get me wrong, there were things I really liked about this. One of them is the art. We'll talk more about Nick Dragotta's art, but I think Nick Dragotta was amazing throughout this. I don't think he missed any beats at all. There were some characters whose story arcs I thought were interesting, like Zhao Lian, I think.
Shaolin.
Jillian, yeah.
Yeah, I liked her. He was cool. I like how she, killed her dad and like took his power and stuff like that. That was pretty cool. There are characters I'm looking at as I scroll through this that I'm like, what were you doing? What was your point? What was your part to play in this? But there was such cool shit, and I think that's why I'm so hot. Is that I feel like this could have been a book that could have been right up my alley if only Hickman cared to be clear about what is happening.
There were certain characters like for me, Solomon, um, the who I didn't understand, and it felt like just a function to bring in the Rangers, purely for plot and convenience. Like the person who started to creep up in the back of his head, I would get confused at pretty consistently. Of just like, all right, like what are you playing at, toying at here, and why is this character necessary? Just give me the Ranger. This guy's fucking cool. We got a sniper, like a big ass sniper that shoots over miles for shit.
Do you know what that was about? The dude in the head?
Yeah,
I thought
that was the other chosen from the nation.
yeah, I thought it was
Yeah.
yeah, like he like somehow
Before he died,
jumped.
he sends a piece of his soul out somewhere, is where the characters say, and then
Right.
there's one panel where it shows the same thing that's in Solomon's brain there, and then that's when they eventually show as like, is it like Cheyenne or Shavaya or something like that?
No, Shivayo, the shaman
The
guy.
shaman, yeah, that's the chosen guy, and that's the guy who's also in Solomon's brain.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's almost like he knew he was gonna die, and he implanted a soul elsewhere to kind of infect someone.
Yeah.
But that was obtuse. It took 2 issues for me to figure that out. I had hints and I had inklings, but it wasn't until later on where somebody mentions like, "Oh yeah, his soul is somewhere," and then there was that panel directly referencing like 2 issues prior.
Gotcha. Okay. I wasn't sure which of the native that was.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Go ahead.
Sorry. As for the framing of the world, I rereading it, it brought me back to a conversation I had with my brother when we first read this. And I thought the revisionist of it was really interesting. Like to be able to uh, place otherwise peoples who were not in positions of power and to grant them power and to grant them access and give them that maybe arbitrarily, or at least for the sake of the story, were was an interesting exploration because I thought that it was interesting that and this only happens after you find out about the timeline, but like the natives disappear for like 70 plus years and have this technological revolution. And it felt reminiscent a bit of like the X-Men stuff, where like they had that revolution and they were, giving out weapons and medicine and all this kind of stuff. So there's like ideas there that were cool and maybe better executed, because they were presented earlier. But the conceptions there were cool to recontextualize. So I thought that I had a lot of fun rereading how the Texas Rangers came about, and the free state of Texas was raised from, the likes of these people and from the ground. The oil men was, made reference to, but then used as a term of endearment. Like there were ideas that were toyed with that I thought were really cool.
Thing is, though, there's a lot of world building in this,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and I'm not sure I care in particular for one place or the other.
Hmm.
And maybe that's the point. Maybe that's the point, that like everything sucks in this world and the apocalypse should happen. And maybe by the end of it, maybe by the end of East of West, I am on the side of death and the apocalypse trio.
Well,
That was a problem that I had with this too, where it's like nothing is good and nobody is good. And so it was really hard to connect with what people were doing and what their motivations were, because it all basically amounted to I want to kill, I don't want to die, I want to rule. That's it, you know? And in the midst of that, characters are doing cool stuff, but they're also saying stuff that I don't understand. So it's like, how do I root myself in this world? You brought up X-Men and the comparison to X-Men, and it's like, well, you connect with the X-Men. In Avengers, you connect with the Avengers. We don't know these people. So it's very, very difficult to find your footing in a world that sucks with people that suck and goals that are unclear. Like I like Death, right? Death has a clear goal. He's like, I want to find my son. Okay. I enjoyed his journey because I understood where he was trying to go, and I understood his sacrifice. Like one of the best parts of the book to me was when they go in that, I think it was the White Tower. I'm not sure where it was, but they go down deep and he meets that disgusting creature, and the
Oh yeah.
creature takes his eyeball out as a sacrifice for learning where his son is. I was like, oh shit, all right, that's pretty cool. You know, um, death is an endless concept, and I guess he's been reborn, and lived and died multiple times, so his body means less to him than the average person. But the fact that he was willing to do that to find his son, I could connect with that.
Hmm. The Oracle. I forgot
Right.
where, but yeah. I sort of took, so I'm taking kind of these, uh the main, or I guess our main characters here, any collection of them are some reflection of the Four Horsemen. These are people who, Shaolin is death. She's an outright killer. She's violent. That is what she is born and bred for. She has her widowmakers, etc. Champlain, he's a manipulator. He's sort of working in the background. He feels much more like famine, like something that comes upon you. The Who was it? War is the endless nation. Like there are these manifestations that appear and reflect the drivers of the apocalypse, because as much as the physical manifestations are coming to bring about the apocalypse, I think there's a message in there of, well, we as people are bringing about our own destruction, and these are the mechanisms, and these are how we're getting there, and it's through these people who we can kind of draw parallels.
I like what you just said. I think my problem with the delivery of that concept is that it feels like people are being driven towards doing evil by the fact that there are these concepts of the horsemen of the apocalypse, and it feels like the world is already spinning towards its own destruction, and it
Mm,
doesn't feel like it needs anybody to do anything in order to get to that place. Like if you don't do what you're told to do, you just die. You just get killed off. No one is safe. So it feels like man doesn't have the ability to choose its own destiny. Its destiny is preordained, again, by the message, which we have no idea what it is. I want to see like what is the agency, who's fighting against this. It doesn't feel like anybody is.
Well, even when they try to fight for it, presumably they fulfill the message in some way. So like there's like this conflict of predestination over free will, which I don't think we're getting a clear answer on, because then there's a moment where the oh my god, the guy that transforms, I'm forgetting the Orion, um
Orion, yeah,
he
yeah.
he starts to write the will, and so he begins to write, technically if his voices the message, he begins to write the destiny. So is that preordained, or is that free will of an individual? And that's where it starts to get a little murky for me. And maybe there's something that happens towards the end that can help clarify that, but I understand what you're saying, Sean.
But even that theme exists for pretty much most of the characters' arcs, or we're only getting half the parabola
Mm.
for a lot of these arcs. But even war, conquest, and famine, they have that bit where like they know what they're there to do. They're to bring about the apocalypse. They are the horsemen of the apocalypse. But even they decide we're gonna do something different. We're gonna break the chain and we're gonna kill the beast, even though we're told not to. We're gonna go and do that. And as soon as they try and do that, they realize I fucked up. So even it's that realization that, like, hey, there is this destiny and this preordained thing. I'm going to try and do some free will. Oh, it doesn't work out for me. That's them realizing that in that moment too. I'm curious. I'm curious about those three to see what happens in that arc for sure. Especially since we were kind of left on a cliffhanger with them by volume
Yeah.
5.
But I wonder then, to Sean's point, like, would this story have functioned if and maybe we're not there at the end, right? But as of right now, this story could function without those characters, because the chosen or the leaders herein could be manifestations of each of those, or a type of manifestation of each of those horsemen.
I think character bloat is an issue with this.
Mm,
I think there's too
Yes.
many characters.
yeah.
Like Sean said, it helps when it's the X-Men. You can add Shang-Chi to the Avengers, but I know who Shang-Chi is. That it's a pre-established foothold into the character. They're introducing new characters by volume 5 still. And a lot of the characters aren't killed off. There are a lot of like side people get destroyed and machinations get ruined, but not a lot of deaths happen by the time we're in this. People are still suffering. Everyone's bleeding out a bit. So it was a little tricky for me to keep up with names. I think Dragotta definitely helps with distinct character designs. That at least made that more palatable for me. But there is a lot of characters in here.
Yeah.
There were times when I was like, man, I really wish we could focus on just one aspect of this for a time. Like the Freeman, the John Freeman. Okay, so he's got tons of siblings. He's in a sort of a war for power with his dad. Like all that was pretty interesting, but it happens in slices. So and in between those slices, there are so many other characters whose stories are developing that by the time you get back to that, it's like, wait, what was happening? What's up with all these brothers? Are they clones? Are they what is this? So I just like I liked a lot of bits, but fitting into the whole, it just felt so overwhelming.
One of the issues I liked, and to your point, Sean, I don't know what number it is. It might be 16 that I have the cover up on right now. But it was the one where the Chamberlain tries to get what's her face from the PRA, Xiaolin,
Yeah.
tries to get her assassinated. And we kind of sit with that for a while. There's multiple fight scenes, and then we see the resolution of him realizing he didn't get her killed. And that's like the issue. And that kind of threw me off in terms of pacing. I was like, oh, did we sit with an entire character and did we have only a plot for this whole issue rather than A through Q? And that was almost refreshing to have that. I was like, okay, cool. We sat with something. We sat with a conflict, and we saw at least a resolution of this battle and where that goes. And Nick Dragotta got to draw the shit out of it. It was fucking awesome. I maybe wish there was more of that. I maybe wish each issue maybe sat with a character for the issue.
To that point, there were so many, because there were so many instances of like, oh, a couple pages for this character, a couple pages for this character. Yesterday, while I was finishing up the last volume, and I got to that moment, um, I was like, okay, I'm gonna read this sequence. It's gonna be a couple pages, and then I have to wash the dishes real quick before like whatever, right? And I'm getting there, and I'm like, all right, I'm like 5 pages in. I'm like 10 pages in. Hold on, this sequence hasn't finished yet. We haven't changed character. I'm like invested now. I have that momentum. Halted, halted because then we go into the next issue, and again, it's back to that. I think we jump around so much that sometimes it loses steam for individual characters. Like I would love to stick around for Xiaodan and her like conquest, her war drive, her warhammer, her war beat. That'd be crazy. What does that look like? But I get the flavor that I get, and it's an interaction with death.
Her and her little mini Batleth from the Klingons that she has, that moon saber thing.
And I really like their kid, Babylon. All that with the kid was sick. Like that's the
Creepy.
kind of Jonathan Hickman shit I want to read about. He's got this kid. Well, Death and Jalion have this child who is Babylon. That's the kid that Death is pursuing to get his child back. But this kid is almost like, I don't know if you guys remember Uncanny X Force, where they're like teaching the new apocalypse the way of the apocalypse, and they've just got him in this room attached to a machine that's teaching him everything, right? Except humanity. Like accept feelings, accept the things that make a person a person. And then he goes out into the world, and there's this fucking like filter on his eyes, so that inside the world he sees everything as awful, but in reality it's not. It's beautiful. So his image of the world is being distorted. Like, yo, hell yeah. Like that's what I want to see.
And there was a bit in that interaction with Balloon and Babylon. Balloon's just like his AI drone, and where I thought the usage of Hickman's single page blank white pages with like a couple of text, in it worked really well. Where Babylon's talking to Balloon, and I think the question was, what's the difference between real life and a perfect simulation? Page turn, nothing, just in one word.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, that is great. That's a good summation of what this character and their journey is. This is nature versus nurture, essentially. What happens when your reality is not real or it's not a perfect simulation? Then there is a difference. And we learn that it's not a perfect simulation because it's skewed. It has a POV, much like the message is then turning into a thing that has a POV because it's being written by person. Um,
Yeah, yeah. And then that POV is becoming like, it feels like then it's moving away from that predestination into free will. Like the question becomes, because Orion comes in and he like adjusts the code of Balloon, is put him into these situations where he's no longer being pointed in a direction, but he is allowed to guide himself into a direction. And that question comes up where you need to kill for survival, and he's presented with this, snarling, disgusting beast, but really it's like a piglet or something, and it's like, you have to kill this in order to survive, um, or whatever it was, right? And he questions, he stops, so it brings back through the story that question of nature versus nurture, and are you destined to follow what you've been taught, how you've been raised, or can you make something of yourself? Those were interesting questions that I want to see answered.
Yes, totally. And it's like that's the kind of shit that, if you told me what East of West was about, I'd probably be like, oh my God, I need this, like injected into my veins, because it has multiple concepts that make me think that way. But the delivery and the way that those concepts are expressed in the text has like go away heat with me, like to where it just makes me feel alienated from it. And I don't like to feel alienated from stories. I like to feel like I'm invited. Like I like to fall into it, not feel like I have to have my guard up against it because I don't understand it. And that's where I came away a lot of times with this book feeling. And it almost like there were times when I just wanted it to be cool. You know, like
Mm.
like when they fight the I'm sorry, I forgot the character's name. The Chiveo, I think, in the desert, and he
Yeah,
transforms into that beast. I was like, yo, oh my God, how are they gonna win this? But then they win in 2 seconds. And it's like, you couldn't have just given us a little more of this. You made me sit through all this horse shit, and then finally something cool happens and it ends in 2 seconds.
that was me with Death and Ranger, where they're having that sniper battle from like miles across, right?
That
And
was
then
nuts.
I was like, "Yo,
Like,
what?
no,
All right,
now
cool."
truce, truce, uncle.
Yeah, yeah, and then they come together and they're doing like the write off, right, to see who's gonna flinch first. Like, oh, awesome, badass. Um, that actually was the page that I stopped reading at, that unlocked that memory. The that huge zoom out, like over the course of 2 pages or something that happens. Where I was just like, oh shit, where'd that bullet? Oh, we're still going. What's good? What? And in my memory, I remember that sniper being like the full page or like longer, but whatever it is, what it is.
Even the guy Orion who has I think it's Orion who has that nasty creature growing out of his arm.
Yeah, yeah.
What was that? It was cool as fuck, but what was that?
That was, I think they just, so I can tell you what it is, but it's not going to tell you what it is. He said it's a creature from the death plane that Chiveo would be able to access, that the nation can access. That's all they tell you what it is. Chiveo got it for something to root out who the mole was within the chosen,
Right. That's right.
but it's just a thing.
And
This
it
is the
doesn't get
first.
explained. Sorry, go ahead.
This is the first book club we have done where I needed to have Wikipedia open for the conversation. And on Wikipedia, it says uh, Ezra is the adopted son of Conquest and seeks to please his mother by becoming what the message demands. He would later eat the prophecy and become the living word. After an incident, he fuses with a demon he later named Boer. He is eventually consumed. I won't say that. Like, oh, okay. What the fuck? Like I read the book and I don't even know what that means.
Yeah. Boar was cool, man. Came out a little is a little hamster or big old fat hamster.
I think it was
Oh
gross.
man,
Yeah.
I wanted to touch on this comment from Comics Are Dope. Comics Are Dope asked if can't find the comment, but he asked, does oh here it is. Does Hickman's clarity and excitement at Marvel not buy him goodwill and earn your trust through this many issues? No. No. Like if I were reading something month over month, then maybe I'd feel differently, but the fact that it's all one chunk and there's no time to like be separate from it, like to digest what you read and be separate from it, I didn't really it was hard to give that much grace because it's like I'm being inundated by these concepts all in one go and they're not adding up and he doesn't seem to care. It's not I don't even feel like I'm asking for hand holding. I just feel like I'm asking for through line.
Mm,
Like where like anytime you're writing a story, you have to consider where's the reader. And I just don't think he considered the reader.
yeah, yeah. Like I can only imagine how this might have been issue to issue. Because in the only reason I'm understanding this is because I had the continuity of 5 issues, 10 issues, 15 issues, right? If it's issue to issue, I'd be forgetting shit, people's names. Oh, what happened last issue? It doesn't really matter because there's so many instances where things happen that what I remember related to a certain character could have happened 2, 3 issues ago.
And in real time, that might have been it could have been 3 months, but it could have knowing how image books tend to get released, it could have been a lot longer than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm pretty sure this book had some delays or planned breaks.
Mm,
Well, it was 45 issues released over 6 years. So that's about what, 2 more years than it should have taken if you were going by like one a month.
yeah. That's fair.
So I could easily see getting lost in that. But again, I don't want to like I did not have a good experience with this almost at all, but there were still things that I liked in it. Um, and I guess we might as well take an opportunity now to talk about the Nick Dragotta art. Um, it's so fucking good. wasn't reading this while it was coming out, but I certainly read people talking about it. And one of the things that I always saw was how amazingly talented Nick Dragotta is. But my first exposure was with Absolute Batman. This dude's been killing it for years.
Yeah, yeah,
The thing with Dragotta's art that always gets me is eyeballs and faces. And there's something about him that's it's never it continues in his Absolute Batman run and Ghost Cage in 2019 or 2022 where it's a little unhuman. It's a bit uncanny valley. Everyone's faces are a little strange. It almost feels like Speed Racer anime original one where you get a weird cell where the eyes were a little off. But it's charming and it's still emotive at the same time. A lot of the character work and the designs on all of them, like it really was doing the heavy share on keeping me in track of who is who and what's what. Like everyone had a distinct look to them, which could have been a tricky thing to do if it was anyone else.
yeah. There's definitely expression in the face that allows you to feel, someone's anger, someone's sadness. There's a transition where Xiao Lian is being told that her child is dead or rather her child is alive from by death, and you can see like the way that she's suddenly like she's becoming soft, really really well done, and the the usage of panels, there's so many. He's been doing that forever. Like I just flipped open to a sequence of the battle where Death is doing kind of like an assault on the city of Mao, and there are one, two. I'm gonna count these panels. Someone vamp for a second.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, man. There were some pages where it was like 14, 15, 16 panels easily. And again, nothing is lost in translation as far as the storytelling, the visual storytelling that's being done.
18 panels
There
in
you go.
volume one, page 109 for anybody who's interested. Like crazy work to be done, and I think it's good experimentation. Like a lot of them also, I think one of the things he does really well. And Tyler, let me see if you have the one that I pulled out. Yes, actually, if you're looking at the screen right now, the panels 3 through 5, technically it's one scene, but what he does to create space in between those scenes is he adds panels. So there's a lot of sequences where it's an extended scene, but to create that space in between all of them, to give them time to allow your eyes to rest on a sequence or a person or an action, is you simply just break up the panel, and it doesn't disturb the flow because it's one unified panel technically. Just taking into consideration the time that you need to read each moment or accept each moment.
Yeah, dude. And I think going hand in hand with that is Frank Martin's colors because I like it's a perfect marriage these two. Like orange is the best color in this book. Like orange is the defining color. It
Mm.
almost makes me think of like a setting sun. The idea that the sun is setting on America and that concept, that theme, that color scheme is all over the place. Frank Martin is as important to this story being told as anybody. And there were pages and times throughout my read where I was like, oh God, I can't stand this writing. But I just let myself go into the art and go into the colors. And that was almost like my happy place in this experience because they were just doing so much brilliant work.
And the point of view that Dragotta takes in a lot of the paneling, uh, I'm a screenwriting major, so the only thing I think of is like the camera shot he chooses for a lot of it is interesting. There's a lot of like super tight close-ups for people's
Mm.
reactions to things. There's a lot of like where you can see someone's face and like the angle that he chooses to take it on, or it skews, it makes the nose longer in a situation, makes the chin longer or the forehead longer. It's almost like impact frames in anime, Marco, where it's like a quick
Yeah.
like snapshot of something that feels very anime manga influenced. Even though the art doesn't visually have a lot of that, it feels like it has some of the techniques, if that makes sense. Um, there's multiple pages where or multiple panels throughout the 5 volumes you read where it's somebody just doing like a quick like turnaround and a reaction eye, but it's a static in one panel. But I can infer that movement and that motion just from the timing he decides to pick for that panel. And timing within panels is something Dragotta does extremely well. We talked about it, when we talk about Absolute Batman. Those little tiny panels that exist, on an 18 panel page, there's always going to be one that's much smaller than the rest. But even there is something that's important.
Yeah.
And Dragotta is a master at it.
Tyler, do you mind going to the page where there's two, but the first one has like a blam and like the second to last
I cut out a
panel?
lot of the graphic ones just in case.
Yeah, there might be. You still had it. You still had it up. Um,
Let's
uh,
see. I might have had it
but one of the things that
briefly.
I feel like I noticed he does is with with certain effects, like certain sound effects, um, the moment of impact is not coming from the person. So the yeah, is that it was that one, but I guess that one's a little. Actually, this one's great. This one's great. The moment of impact is not from the person shooting, but from the impact that actually happens on the person. So one of the panels that I would have wanted to show is um, one of the guys, somebody running, and Death is chasing him, and you see the blam, but the blam happens on the person. Like the explosion happens, the pop of the gun happens on the person,
Hell
and I
yeah.
think it's really distinct because typically you see someone shooting, and they'll shoot the gun, and it's a two-page moment, right? But
Linear
this is
thing, yeah.
yeah, yeah, but this is really effective because you're making the assumption already that they've been shot, and why are you going to show the moment of shooting? That might not be a heightened moment as opposed to the moment of impact. You can draw more effect out of that. The same with these panels. The Ranger and Solomon are being chased, and the dust is clearing, and the Ranger just shoots the probes from the Endless Nation that are being chased, and you get this crazy sequence of pop, 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 the four blams across, small moments, small panels, effective, and it saves real estate. There's a lot of just thought about real estate on the page as well that I really, really appreciate that I don't think any other writer does or artist does rather.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of the same way we talk about how, there's a lot you can learn and study in Absolute Batman from a visual standpoint and a storytelling standpoint with panels. I think there's a lot of that here. And I would love to be able to read, well, I probably won't do that, but I would love to be able to read this again and like pay even more attention to those things because I can tell there's a lot under the hood when it comes to that.
I will say, and you joke about not reading this again. Uh, the month time frame of getting through all this in such a condensed time, I think, is a little tricky, and I don't think it did it any favors. Just in terms of our just scheduling and having to read this for a certain amount of time. I don't think it would work as a month to month slow burn for me, but a slower burn than how quickly I had to kind of like microdose this.
Yeah.
I lucked out. I did the first 3.5 volumes on a plane. Uh, Perfect way to
Okay,
kill some time.
Mister Coast to Coast. All right.
Uh, Businessman out here.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't know if like I don't know if I care to see what happens. And that's a big bummer for me because I invested like almost $100 in getting these. And then, it's Hickman's one of my favorite writers, if not my favorite writer. So this is like a very not good experience that I had. And then to top it off, I didn't even read the whole thing. So I could either choose to get more of what I didn't like or have this hole unfulfilled of I don't even know how this ends.
6 was pretty good. Just gonna say.
Well, you were
I'm
high on this, weren't you?
I was, yeah.
Right.
I am hooked enough to want to finish it out. Am I going to finish the next 5 volumes in a month? No. It'll get done probably within the year. But it's enough to like I need to know what happens. Like
Yeah.
when's the last time an image book finished? Like I could at least give it that.
If this is enticing to you guys, uh, nah, it's a spoiler. It's a spoiler. Uh,
So I read the
there's a
wiki, so
yeah.
It
Well,
didn't spoil anything for me,
no,
actually.
okay. I was too
okay.
afraid to to read it, honestly.
There's a good moment at the end, the last issue of Volume 6, that ties together a lot of pieces and characters.
Hmm. Fair enough. Fair enough. Let's hit some comments because you guys have had some stuff to say about this, and certainly my response has triggered some reactions from you guys. James Jones says, "Gotta admit, I am shocked by Sean's reaction. I really think this is Hickman's masterpiece. A comment on Americans via an alternative American history. Yes, but then also with the apocalypse for some reason."
We're driving ourselves to the end. It's the brink. Oh, 2025.
Like, why are they there? You know, like why do the four horsemen exist? Why isn't death with them? How did that all get started? Like it almost makes me question, is America the way it is because the apocalypse has always been playing underneath it, or did the choices of man cause these concepts to spawn out of the dirt and accelerate the process that humanity started? Like, those are the kinds of things that I want to know because that's how my mind works. But
Mm.
Hickman doesn't answer any of those questions unless I missed it.
It seems like it's a cyclical thing, like their rebirth and the bringing of the apocalypse. Because there was mention of like the last one, the last culling of the world being like 25,000 years ago or something. Um, so I think to your point though, what is the time scale involved for that? Because they also mentioned they were just recently around like 15, 20 years ago or something.
Right. And if this is just what they do, if they just call humanity, then what is humanity's part to play? Like, what is our culpability? That's
Mm.
why, to what James Jones said, like, I didn't get that, because if it's a criticism or commentary on American culture, well, this has been happening since before America existed, according to the book. So what did we do wrong to cause this or to earn this end?
We were
Or is
born
it
with
just the
sin.
nature of humanity or of Earth?
We're born with sin, man.
I read it. I mean, if we're gonna narrow it down to America, like that is the. Hmm. I'm trying not to get on my Bernie Sanders soapbox. Like there is an elite class of people that have more control over things, and really their individualistic desires are what's controlling the entire country and what that can do. Everyone who's in the Chosen, are like our main cast of characters, is only doing things for their own gain and not the betterment of the U.S. as a whole. And it's that idea of tribalism across separate parts of the U.S., almost like states, and the way there's tribalism there politically, um, all under this guise of like sci-fi western. And I think sci-fi western was big at the time. 2013, you said?
Yeah, bro. Yeah.
Yeah. No, what do you had? Like Copper was like a book at Image for a bit, like Copperhead, I think.
I mean,
You had
Saga to some
Westworld,
degree.
Saga, and yeah. Sci-fi western was a thing. So, but I can see how it's a bit of a commentary on America. I don't think Hickman does outright commentary. Maybe like Black Monday Murders is the closest, but we'll never finish that. So, uh, but his stuff kind of lies a little deeper and under concepts, really. But I can see that read.
Hey, well, figure drawing's right, Tyler. This isn't a political stream. Let's stray
Yeah,
back into the
no, we're
book
only
and
talking about art. That's not political, right?
right,
Yeah.
right. So Zaid comics asks, how did you guys like Crow and Wolf? Their designs are so striking.
Here's another issue I have with this book. They are cool. I want them as action figures. Who are they? We finally get something about a wolf towards the end. There's like little hints here and there. There are very obtuse hints about Crow. We know nothing about Crow by volume 6. By the end of volume 5, there's passing references to people referencing her, but there's nothing. And like she's like the one I think about when I think about this book, just in terms of like
Mm.
visuals. So that was kind of a bummer because I really wanted to know more about her and I got nothing. But they look really cool. I can give you that, Zaid.
Yeah, I agree with everything Tyler said. Figure drawing asks, Sean, you value writing over art, speaking broadly as variables abound. However, did you ever value art first? No. I've always, ever since I was a little kid, highly been driven and motivated by the words and stories, and not as enthralled by the visuals and stories. I love art, and I when I was a little kid, I used to draw. I used to draw Pokemon. I used to draw wrestling in my notebooks. That fell away from me at some point. But no, I've never. I wouldn't say I've ever been a visuals first kind of person.
From
Go ahead.
sorry, from Chop Harder Alchemist, in reference to Nick Dragata, there's a fluidity to his art, almost like the lines being slightly askew and not rigid, balanced structure that lends to the emotion more. Yeah, I think that's reference to what Tyler mentioned about like the angles chosen as well, and what heightened moment within a sequence is being chosen.
And I think it adds to not only the emotion but the speed and the energy of the book. Like when we do get not talking heads, and some actual action and some violence, it's good looking in
Yeah.
this book.
Yeah, and the talking head moments were like 9 panel grid, maybe every once in a while like really thin. You have like a sequence across that's thin, 5 6 panels.
It becomes east of West Wing.
Jack Cloudier says only reading half would have left me unsatisfied as well. And I hear that the constraints of the time frame of the book club make it so that 25 issues is a lot, right? We've got lots of shit to read throughout the week, personally, for pals pulls and whatnot. So it's hard to get through 45 issues in 1 month. Um, but at the same time, what if you were reading this across 9 years? Like, at what point do you feel satisfied if you're reading something for 9 years and it only makes sense at the very end? That's a lot of investment, dude.
Don't make fun of mantras.
Well, to be fair to Monstrous, though, I think Monstrous made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it a lot. Good to see you always laughing, hanging out. Um, Atomic Count says Sean not liking East of West is the most surprising book club result ever, but everyone can like or not something as they see fit. Hound, I got to tell you, man, nothing would have pleased me more than to be able to come here and espouse the greatness of this book. I just didn't like it. Like, Hickman's my guy. There's no reason why I would ever have a vested interest in not liking something that he did. It's certainly not a decision I made, more a natural reaction to something that left me confounded.
Yeah, right. One does not choose to not like a thing.
Hey, maybe some people do. I've seen other channels where it seems like that's all they do,
They got to
but
get the money, Sean. That's why.
I'm not that one. I'm not that person. Not at all.
Electric says East of West starts with a huge yet self-enclosed what if world building question. Who here reading it for the first time noticed the general decompression and lack of infographics slash info pages? Yeah, I think the intercut pages with like quotes, and so, like the timeline was probably the most that we get, and that gets played, again down the line with Hoxpox and his X-Men stuff. So I think there's some foundational ideas here for Hickman. And honestly, I would have appreciated some of those pages being infographics and information. Like a data page would be super helpful.
I mean, Avengers is where Avengers and sorry, Final Fantasy, Fantastic Four. I got the wrong FF. Fantastic Four is where he did those data pages. That's where that comes from, really, from what I imagine Hickman doing. Even Secret Warriors had a lot of Shield documents in that. So I honestly was surprised about how little Hickman adjacent graphic design material was in this. I figured it's his indie book. He's going to put his whole Hickmussy into it.
I know it's harder sometimes with indie books just from because the cost of the book is something that you have to be concerned with, whereas Marvel has to be concerned with it when it's Marvel. So I thought maybe that could have been a reason, but if ever there was a book where I would have appreciated some infographics, this was that one.
Like, imagine if we got like an infographic for when they get the scroll, the bloody scroll from what's his face, Orion.
Yeah.
Like, if
Yeah.
we could have seen what was on that scroll and it still not have made any sense to us, but it would have added something you know?
The visual of that.
If I knew that I wasn't supposed to get the message, like if that was explained to me or insinuated to me in some way, that would have helped. I just I can't my mind just doesn't allow me to let that go. Like what is the message? And if you're not willing to tell me what it is, but you're also making it an extremely important thing, I can't wrap my head around that, dude.
I'm mulling on it as we talk about it. The message is it's the suitcase in Pulp Fiction. We never see what's inside it, but it's important for the plot.
Yeah.
But I think in Pulp Fiction, what is inside is less important than the journey that those two specific individuals are on. And it's such a smaller thing. It's a much smaller story that, it could be gold. It could like you can fill in the blanks and they mostly make sense. But in this world, the world turns on this message. So that's a pretty big deal. Reaper XC says, love your show, guys, including when Cale is on. I hope you have a great new year and success in 2025. I'll catch the replay of this once I finish the series. Thank you, Reaper. Appreciate you. Have a happy new year as well.
And Reaper also recommends check out Manhattan Projects by Hickman, which I second. Manhattan Projects is the fucking shit. That was my first Hickman, where I was like, it was one of my first image books. Honestly, I was like, oh man, Oppenheimer is insane person in that.
Oh, interesting. I didn't realize that that's what that was about. I thought it was like space stuff.
It's the Manhattan Project, Marco.
I thought it was just like purely referenced by name. I didn't realize. Like,
no, it's quite
yeah.
literally that, and a secret base underneath where they devised other things besides the nuke.
Oh, cool. Okay, I have it. I need to get it.
You'll love the art too.
Aaron Ruiz says, if Sean continues reading East of West but doesn't continue Chainsaw Man, I'm going to have some words. Well, you better share those words now because there is a much higher likelihood that I would finish East of West than continue Chainsaw Man. And I like Chainsaw Man more than this.
That I saw that comment and I was like, yo, he actually had a blast with that one.
Yeah, it was more or less fun. This is more or less frustrating. But I'd rather read Jonathan Hickman. I don't know.
Oh, Sean, and you're so close to like a huge twist that happens in Chainsaw Man if you pick up from where we dropped off. Like
99% of Chainsaw Man readers quit reading before they hit it big.
Exactly.
Damn, yo, that part that we read though, where it was like there was something about like a gun or a train or something.
The gun demon. Yeah.
The gun demon. Oh
Yeah.
my God. That was sick. And then when they go to that house or that building
The
and
hotel.
it just keeps changing. Oh my God. That was crazy as fuck. I wish that was a comic book though. Like if it was a comic book.
Get the fuck out of here.
I probably would have finished it all. Like let Nick Dragotta get behind the draw. I probably would have finished it by now. Is it finished actually? Is Chainsaw Man over?
No.
The first part of it is, and then he came back for like a second part.
Yeah, it's still around. It was on a lot of people's best of list for this year. Apparently, still fucking kicking ass. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like 200 plus issues now. The first part ends at like 150.
Jesus Christ! Oh my
Yo,
God.
output, bro! Shit, that output, and then we're getting how many comics in a year?
Output. All I ever hear about is how comics need to end. But you're talking to me about some shit that's 200 plus issues deep.
And it's only like 3 years old, 4 years old.
Other than let's see, Chris Claremont, because Chris Claremont probably did. Oh, maybe. Well, did he do 200 issues of X-Men? He probably did.
Probably.
I mean,
across
X-Men in general, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Outside of that, you're not really getting that type of output from anybody on one subject in comics.
Canon manga.
That's the funny thing to me. Figure drawing. I said what I said mostly just to get a reaction. I wasn't serious. Does Sean read regular books, novels, or whatever? Oh my, do I? I fucking love novels. Yes, I do. In fact, right now I am near the completion of Wool, which is the first book in the Silo series. But yes, I am an avid novel reader. um, not the way I wanted to end things here for the year. Not the book club to go out on. Certainly not going to make the best of the year book clubs, if you ask me, at least in terms of books. Would I recommend it? No. Maybe my tolerance wasn't high enough for this. Um, but I just, as much as I love the art and the colors and some of the concepts, the actual material left me feeling pretty cold and alienated and disappointed, quite frankly. But I am happy that there are people who enjoyed this more than I do. Um, I'm glad you guys had a better time with it.
I had a decent time with it. I still don't think I'd recommend it. I think I would need to know. I'm not gonna just blindly recommend this. I would need to know who I'm recommending this to. This is not something that everyone will like. Yeah, that there would have to be qualifiers to recommending this.
Yeah, for sure. Matt Fisher, thank you so much with the 4.99 super chat. Happy New Year, scamps. I'm still sad we never got Jonathan Hickman's dystopian Star Trek book. I mean, you want a spacefaring story? This is probably the closest you get for a image book.
Imperial coming out next year from Marvel.
Oh, well, there you go. Stand by. Yeah, I would recommend this, just because I've had so much fun in the process. Where we're going, where we're heading, the trajectory has been really enticing, and I agree that you have to pick the right person for this. Like, definitely not, at least for me, I don't think, and was a barrier for entry for me as a new reader. I think somebody who's a little bit more, um, who has more experience probably will get more enjoyment out of this. And I think the way that the story is presented can be confusing. So, head in with a bit of caution. If just head in with a bit of caution, I guess.
Yeah, it's not Baby's first comic, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Electric says at my LCS, it's East of West is highly requested by people at my age, 45-ish and around there. Oh, okay, so you're telling me that I got to wait another decade before I tap into this again? Because if so,
We'll explain it to you when you're older, Sean.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and presumably those people are older readers. They're more seasoned readers. So, maybe that works out for them.
yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. I am bummed out because I never, ever, ever want to come into a book club with this type of feeling. I certainly don't want to end the year on this type of feeling, but hopefully, this announcement that we're going to make will brighten things and allow us to exit on a much better note because we do have the pleasure of announcing to you guys the theme, the subject for the very first book club of the year, and that is your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Yes, we are going to be doing Spider-Man month here in January. We're kicking things off with arguably a top two superhero in existence, and that is everybody's favorite, Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man. Yes, yes, this is going to be Peter based for the sake of this. Peter is
Oh,
Spider-Man. So, unfortunately, you can't talk to us about Spider-Girl or, Miles or anything like that. It's purely Peter based and anything goes, we're going to keep it to, because I know with more of the Marvel stuff, it can be like, there aren't like a named story to go with. So if you are choosing a chunk, we're gonna keep that to about what we did for this, so like 25, I think is appropriate. But it can run the gamut. The death of Gwen Stacy, Spider-Man Blue, the death of Jean DeWolf, the other if you want to go down that road. One More Day if you hate yourself. All kinds of
We
options
did that
are
already.
available.
okay. Yo,
Ultimate Spider-Man. If you want to start the beginning of Ultimate Spider-Man, that's an option.
oh,
Totally.
Yeah, I never read it.
that's
That'd be a first for me.
wow.
Did you guys do Life Story
We read it on the parts of it
while
on
it
the
was
show.
coming out? Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think we read every issue.
I think we did do it for the book club though.
Okay. Well,
I feel like we did. Am I bugging out,
We
Marco?
did Spider-Man Blue for sure.
Yeah.
I never read that either.
But that was
It's the other
ancient
time.
history.
Yeah,
Maybe we did actually. Now that you say that, I'm blanking.
I'm sure a
I
simple
think we
Google test will find that.
did, but I also think it might have been in the before times.
Sure. Before the retcon.
Yes.
No Chop Harder
yes.
Alchemist. It is not Paul month.
Yeah,
The
you want to
limits
listen to
very
those couple of
tightly.
reviews? We did
There's
it
not enough
already.
material. We're not there yet. Give Paul about 5 more years and we can do Paul month. And I'll be here for that for sure. So yeah, Spider-Man, you guys will be able to nominate the Spider-Man book you want us to talk about. You'll be able to do that on patreon.com/thecomicspals for free. That also happens to be where you can vote to determine the ultimate winner. But the nomination process will play out across Patreon. It'll play out across our YouTube page, youtube.com/thecomicspals, and our Discord server, all for free. All you have to do is let us know the book you most want us to talk about. And we'll announce the four most nominated, and then of course the eventual winner here across the next couple of weeks. Aaron Ruiz says we did Spider-Verse. We did do Spider-Verse.
Yes,
I remember
we
that.
did.
Yeah, I remember that.
Moreland.
Yeah, Moreland, but he was a chump by that point.
Yeah, he had all
Where-
those brothers and sisters, right?
They hated on him. Yeah.
I don't like Moreland. I think Moreland's a shit character. I'm sorry. Prove me wrong. If you guys can give me a Moreland book to read that makes him likable.
Have you read the other? I
I've
think
never
it's
read the
called
JMS run.
Oh, so that you can't. How can you say you hate a character? You got to read his origin. That's his
I'm
first
just
story.
saying. I see his Marvel Legends action figure on clearance constantly. Maybe not too much love for him.
This isn't a Spider-Man podcast. I like Moreland in that one story. I
Okay.
don't think he needs anything more.
Sure. You don't
One
want
of those
more Moreland.
No,
Yeah.
no. Atomic Hound says Craven's Last Hunt, please.
I'm sure that will probably make the 4.
I would be shocked if
Yeah.
it did not.
Which I've never read.
Hey.
There's a lot of holes in my Spider-Man reading. Like I've read Spider-Man consistently since I started reading comics, so I have everything for the last 15 years down pat in my brain. Before that, there's not much, just tangential knowledge.
Yo, get us OG Spider-Man. Someone vote for the first
don't wanna-
15
no,
issues.
I don't.
It's so
They're
much
so
fun.
good. They're so
They
good.
are
they?
good.
Is there meat on that
Yes.
discussion?
Uh,
No.
That's the problem.
but they're just really fun stories. Like they're isolated moments and they're cool.
Cool.
Issue by
That was
issue.
we just did the book club. There you go. Good job. Really fun stories.
Near says nominating the JMS run, never formally read a Spider-Man run. Well, now's a great opportunity. We'll be doing Spider-Man related material on the main show as well. So hopefully we can start fostering some good conversations around Spider-Man. Sounds like Tyler has some holes in his, earlier history.
Fill
Sounds
'em.
like some of our, yeah, let's do that. Let's have those conversations. Let's start that process and get us all a little bit more learned when it comes to the webhead. All right, guys, we're going to get out of here. This is our last stream of the year. So the next time you're going to see our faces is actually going to be 2025. Thursday, the first Thursday of 2025, we'll be presenting Pals Pulls live. And then on Saturday, we're going to do something that I really wanted to do this past Saturday, but we couldn't, which is we are going to talk about our, amongst other things, we're going to talk about our resolutions, our New Year's resolutions. And I have one for comics that I think will shock the world.
What? He's gonna
Stop.
cancel his Comixology subscription?
That would shock me.
Didn't happen in 2024 or 3. Ain't happening in 25.
Oof.
We'll see. Tune in Saturday, 10:15 a.m. Eastern to find out. Happy New Year. Thank you all so much. We love you. Take care of yourself.